So double click that. Okay, so your DLL file, I'm going to have to go to photos. Oh, you're already understanding, but so you're going to do like VSD photos. So that's the file that you're going to want it to be. So navigate a new folder to that. You can drag and drop it. Yeah, use your yeah, there you go. It's just a DLL file. Yeah, don't do that. It's just a DLL file. Okay, so I'll try standing again. Hit that one more time. Because this didn't actually, yeah, click that. And this didn't actually work last time because that's what I get for getting for years. It's a perfect get for working at that course. Oh, sorry. Go back to your actual like Finder windows and actually drag and drop it from here into the correct folder over here because last time we tried dragging and dropping it in there, it didn't work. Okay, so yeah, grab that nail and find that exact file. Program file. Yes. There you go. Oh, man. Track time should be 32. Track part time. Staying recording. And then because now you can actually see where it is. And you can navigate other things. Click on the arrow. Make sure it's there. It would, yeah. It should. Or maybe click that and see what happens. Now scan. Okay, you can delete it anyway. So put it in the 64 folder instead. It didn't work. Yeah. Is it not recognizing for you yet?
People were asking about us, or that way is you can ship it.
Okay. Oh, so this is perfect. Tommy, when you drag and dropped it, did you just drag the component right into the scanner?
The list, the component list.
Okay. Try that. Try taking the DLL file and just dragging and dropping it into here. It works on Mac. That's a good point though. If you're running traction on the PC and you're having trouble with the plugin itself or finding the plugin, then try closing out and opening it back up in 32-bit. Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so everyone's got their plugin recognized and we're ready to go?
Give us one more.
Sure.
We got one individual who needs installation.
Oh yeah, those are, I just added those in as new tracks. You can label these whatever you want. I just labeled those for the purpose of this demo.
There we go. You want the little last two.
It only works on the Mac. Oh, actually, it does work because the one we tried it on was opened up in 64. So make sure you open this up in 32. Yeah, this is 64, so you're going to want to close out the window for 32. Less than.
Before you do that,
You're going to have to do it again as soon as you open it back up in 64. Yeah, having it 32. Yeah, it's still.
Thank you, man. I learned something.
There you go. Now you can, if you can, you can log in.
In this class, it's little wise and smart. So one last thing is Windows plugin. I think what we need to do is, we can kind of open the settings. Plugins.
Yep.
And then, okay, you said drag and drop.
You should be able to drag and drop the DLL file
The deal.
from the Magical 8 net.
Okay, so yeah, going back to the desktop, I need to extract that. Extract all of it. Let's do it. Go for it. No, it's already on the desktop, so that's not the problem. And then that's the deal on the top. So the other one's an open traction. If we can hit the little weird sort of, so that will cheat, easily drag and drop that. See if it works.
Yay, it worked. Okay. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Really appreciate the patience.
So that was the worst part, I promise. Okay, so now that everyone's installed and ready to go, I'm just going to give you a quick tour of. What's that? Oh, sorry.
Build is that plugin, drag and drop in the Xbox.
You might be in 64 bit. Yeah. Yeah. Rebuild is not. There it is. You want 32. It's weird because the components recognized in both versions on that. I don't know why.
Okay.
Oh, so this is actually, why don't you open up this window? The easiest way is to open up this window, find the DLL, drag and drop it right in there. And you should be good to go.
Every time I click on progress, that's
That is weird. And you're definitely open to,
We may be getting a lot of that's the idea that we figured out.
oh wow, okay, great, okay. And now you have two. So you're good to go at this point. I'm gonna guide you from there. Okay, now we're ready to go. So from here, what you guys are going to do is you're actually going to go to New Project and start a brand new project, and you can name it whatever you want: TVGS, Chiptunes Demo, anything. And you should see a screen that looks similar to this. I named my tracks, but you don't have to worry about it. You should just see like track 1, track 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Can you repeat that again?
What's that?
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, so from here, whoops, you're going to go to your projects pane and go to new project, and you're going to name it whatever you want and press OK. And it should pop up as a tab on the right. Okay, good. How are you? Good. Okay, so is everyone everyone has a new project open up? Oh, there you go. Okay, perfect. Yep, and next is new project and title it. You got it, right? You just hit the new project and new point. Okay, perfect. Okay, cool. So raise your hand again if you've ever used what's called a digital audio workstation, or a DAW. Just one person. Okay, cool. So, oh, 2 people. I forgot about you. Okay, so a digital audio workstation is basically for anything audio related. You can record things, you can use synthesizers, instruments, software instruments, pretty much anything you want. We're going to obviously use the magical 8-bit plugin here, but I'm still going to give you a brief tour of how it works anyway, because it's just good to know if you want to compose your own musical pieces or edit your sound effects later. So these right here down the left side, these are your tracks. You can name them right here. You also have the ability to resize them. You can mute and solo down here as well. You can also actually move the tracks around and reorder them however you want. Up here are your global parameters. So global parameters are things like, I don't know if anyone has any music theory knowledge or basic musical knowledge, but things like tempo, time signature, markers to keep track and organize of your project. Those are all up here in your global parameters. The tempo is this blue line right here. You can also change that, resize it, whatever you want. And if you press enter at any time, a marker will fly to the top. And that's just for you to help keep track of certain sections. It's really helpful if you have large, unwieldy projects.
How do you delete that?
You should be able to just backspace or delete. Also, quick shortcut commands. If you use the arrow keys right and left, this is really helpful. You can move what's called the playhead. That's basically where if you actually press the space bar, it would start to play from exactly where that playhead is. So you can move it around and move to different spots in your composition at any point. If we move all the way to the right, this is our output section. So when we're talking about digital audio workstations, we're talking about an audio signal that's coming in and going out. So right here, and I'll show you how to do this in a minute, I've dragged the magical 8-bit plugin into the track, and so that's the audio that's actually being created. Over to the right, this is our volume, and that's where, and right here, this is going to be your meter, so that's the output. That's you can see when I start playing on the MIDI keyboard that I have attached. Can you see all the way in the top right? That's the audio signal that's coming out. And if I move this down, that's the volume. I can move it up or down. So that's going to be the basics of how you're going to get your mix going. If you have a few different instruments, you're going to want to use those volume parameters to adjust and make sure that your mix is actually not peaking or going in the red. Let's see. Down here in the bottom right, if you can see that, this is your transport area. So play is obviously spacebar, and it also switches to stop. So if you hit space, you can play or stop. It's the basic functions of pretty much any software. That circle is going to be record, but you can also just press R. That's a short key command that's very useful. And the arrow keys are what I mentioned before. That moves you about 1 bar ahead or 1 bar behind. There's also some cool things down here for the basics of recording, like punch. It allows you to punch in if you're recording any audio. Really, all that we're going to need to worry about here is the click. So if I have the click on and I press spacebar, that's the metronome. So this is going to be really important later on when we start to compose some simple music, because that is basically what our grid is. If you don't compose to a grid or to the metronome, all of your timing is going to be off. So that's really important. And then again, down here is our output for the entire session. So that's our master output. And you can also see that, actually you can see when I do this, you can see that the signal's coming in here, and you can see what that signal looks like and how loud it is on the track. But you can also see it down in the bottom right in the output, because that's where the audio is being sent to. Are there any questions so far? We're kind of blowing through this, but you're going to get a chance to come up with some sound effects soon. So now that we kind of know what traction is like, the next step is actually going to be to insert a MIDI region so that we can start composing using these sounds. So in order to insert a MIDI region, you have to click on the track, and actually, it's down here in Insert New Clip. So you can see you can either insert new MIDI clip or insert new audio clip. We're going to use MIDI for now because we're actually using a synthesizer. So when that pops up, another grid shows up, and this is going to be, this is actually linked to the time grid that you have with the metronome. But it also, now in the top left, we see we have what's called a piano roll. So we don't just have the time going from left to the right on the x-axis, we also have frequency or the pitches of the notes on the y-axis. And I'm hooked up to a MIDI keyboard so you can actually see. But for you guys who don't have a MIDI keyboard, it's also really easy to write in notes. When you open up the MIDI region, you automatically have this pencil tool right here. So I can automatically just draw in whatever dots I want. What's that?
Try to make this pretty long.
Output to a MIDI device, or I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay. Also, where are you getting your keyboard from?
Oh, I know why. Okay. So one other thing that I actually forgot to mention is the way that we import the way that we select what instrument we're using. It's a little bit weird in this digital audio workstation. You'll find if you use other ones. But in this one, what you have to do is you go to the top right, and you click, and you drag it. And what you're going to do is you're going to drag it to right in front of the volume bar right there. Can you guys see that?
What are you thinking?
So they call these filters. So in the top right, this is, it says new filter right there. You're going to click and drag it to right in front of the audio bar for each track. I can come around and point it out a little bit easier so that you can see it. This is going to be the filter that you're going to drag. Oh yeah, you already got it. Perfect. Right, so after you drag it in and let it go, it's going to give you a few options for what kind of filters you're going to use. You're going to select Magic, it should be, what was that again? Right, synth and then magical 8-bit plugin. There should be some others that are native to traction, but we want to use the magical 8-bit first. Did everyone get that? So that's okay too, but you're going to want to put it in front of the volume because that's the signal works kind of chronologically in order. So this will allow you to change the volume after you're already using that synth. So the signal chain and the order actually does matter. You got it already? What's that? Oh, sure. It's really simple. So you already got the MIDI region in there, that's good. You're just going to grab, there you go, now let it go. And you're going to go to magical 8-bit plug. There you go, and that's it. So that's setting your output to the magical 8-bit plugin. Got it already? Yes, you do. Why don't you just drag and drop it before the volume? That way, any volume adjustments you make will occur after the synthesizer.
We're just selecting magical
Yep. And that's your synth. How did I get the orange button? Oh, okay, so that's the MIDI grid. So you're gonna click on search tracks, and it's actually, sorry, it's really weird. These are all different functions, but if you click right there, you go, that's it. Insert, click, insert MIDI. There you go. And you're gonna want to resize this track so it's nice and big. There you go. Perfect. And you've already got that 8-bit going. Okay, so you've got your MIDI clip, and now you're just going to click and drag on that filter, drag and drop it right here. There you go. And now select magical 8-bit from it. Perfect. See, so as soon as you have that MIDI clip in there, and you've set the output to magical 8-bit, you should hear some sounds when you start drawing in your MIDI regions. And this is the fun part. Still not working for you?
I have that here.
It's got a thingy on it.
And I don't care anything.
Let me see this.
Yeah.
Did you change any of these settings at all? Default audio output. This should work.
It's not big enough.
Yeah. Oh, but are you hearing it or? Try that one more time.
Let's see.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Why don't you close traction and restart it? Try to rescan it too. Because that should be working. Is it working for everybody? Are you hearing sounds? No?
I have to go to the settings and specify an output for that.
Oh, yes, okay. Got it. Oh, yeah, Tommy, that's it too, into the settings. You have to make sure that it's your built-in speakers that are the output. Cool. Is yours working? You should be able to do it within track. Yes. So you're going to go to settings, audio IO. Weird. Oh, yeah, that's working. Why is it not in here? Yeah, watch your ears because sometimes this will get loud. Is it working for you? Okay, awesome. And you're good to go? You good to go? You just try and draw in the close. Yep, I've got an audio out of it. Nice. So one unfortunate downside to traction is that, to my knowledge, it doesn't actually have a caps lock keyboard, which would make this a lot more of a musical endeavor. But that's also why I recommend just getting a really cheap MIDI interface if you can. You can get one for like $30 or something, and it's really helpful even if you're not going to Okay, so real quick, I want to talk about, before we actually get into these sounds and like where they come from, let's talk about the MIDI functionality for a sec. So obviously up here in the top right you have these different tools. The mouse tool is going to let you click and drag and move things. But it also lets you change the lengths. Let's get that down. It also lets you change the lengths of things, move it around, whatever you want. And if you want a specific length for, say, like a melodic passage, and you just want everything to be 16th notes or 8th notes, you can actually go to length right here, LEN, click 8-beat, and then when you go back to the pencil tool, now it's smaller. You could also do. So the length is what changes the default size or the default length. Does anyone know what velocity is? Anyone but Taro?
I actually don't know.
Oh. Okay, so
I heard of it.
So the velocity, these tools are meant to be used ideally with a MIDI keyboard. So velocity is basically how hard you're hitting the MIDI notes. And that changes, in this case it changes the volume. In other cases it changes some different things, but for the most part we can think of it as volume. So velocity means louder or softer. The lower the velocity, the softer it's going to be. The louder the velocity, the louder it's going to be. So it's very simple. It's a very good tool to kind of clean up your MIDI if things are sounding weird. Also, you have your eraser tool here, and you've got the line tool, which just creates disasters. Or like really experimental contemporary concert music.
There's a difference.
You're talking to the wrong person. Anyway. Okay, so now I know that it's taking a long time to get you to actually mess with this, but before we start talking about how to use Magical 8-Bit, I kind of want to talk a little bit about where it comes from and what we're actually using. So I just want to briefly talk about these wave shapes. Can everybody see that? So what we're actually doing when we're playing around with any synthesizer, not just the Magical 8-Bit, is we're actually using what's called an oscillator to generate these pure tones. So what we have up here is the top one is a sine wave, the one below it is a square wave, the one below that is a triangle wave, and the one below that is a sawtooth wave. They're called pure tones because we don't really hear these in nature. They're very simple, and in nature we hear things that are a lot more complex. So in nature what we'd really hear is a whole bunch of complex, a complex array of sine waves smashed together that sound like something. But we're using synthesizers to generate these really pure, simple tones. And what Magical 8-Bit plugin does is it really has sampled these tones, and this specific plugin actually simulates the way that the NES would use it. So there's a little bit of distortion to it, and it sounds very, very accurate of what the NES would sound like. So before we actually get to doing anything, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you really quickly what these tones look like on an EQ. Does anyone know what an equalizer is, or an EQ? Tommy, you don't get to answer. Okay, so
This is all new to me. Is an equalizer like volume related?
it is volume related. So let me just get the equalizer out. This is an equalizer right here. So what we were looking at before with the wave shapes, we were looking at amplitude, which is loudness, over time. So that's what each of those, that's also why it's called an oscillator, because there's a basic pattern that it oscillates between, with the sine wave, the triangle wave, the square wave, the sawtooth wave. So with an EQ, we have something a little bit different. We still have amplitude on the y-axis, but over the x-axis we actually have frequency. So you're going to see what pitch this tone is actually hitting. So the first one that I'm going to do is the simplest. It's the sine wave. And the first thing you notice about that is it actually is not hitting any other frequencies. It's the simplest sound that you can have. It's really just one specific pure frequency. This actually isn't in the magical 8-bit plugin because it's sort of hard for the NES to simulate this because it is such a non-complex tone and there's a little bit of sort of distortion involved. Can you guys all see that? Okay, good. So that's the sine wave. Let's get into the actual fun stuff. I'm going to switch over to the 8-bit. And we're going to take a look at what the triangle wave looks like in an EQ. So try and take note while we're doing this. Try and take note of how the differences between each of these sounds. It's going to get more and more complex, and it's going to get more harmonically complex as we go down. So this is the triangle wave. And what do you notice there? Can you see that? Let's see then. I'm gonna put this in the top left corner, which is like the only place of the screen that you can see.
Thank you.
All right. I'm not sure why it's wobbling, but you can still get the idea though. What's the difference between that and the sine wave? That's not a rhetorical question. All right, ignore the wobbling because I think it's because I've got like 4 programs open right now.
This seems to get to its highest volume.
What's that?
It seems to get to its highest volume quick.
Yeah, actually, that is an important thing. The more complex these sounds get, the louder they usually get. Like, you might not be able to hear a lower frequency sine wave even at all, whereas you can definitely hear a low frequency square wave. So let me try to reopen this and see if we can not get that wobble. Nope. That's super. Oh, you know what? It might also be. No, traction's muted. All right. Well, if you look at the EQ, the biggest difference between this and the sine wave is the harmonics that you have. See, with the sine wave, all we had was this one pure tone down around like 500. But with this triangle wave, we have a bunch of extra tones up here. Actually, that was a square wave. Sorry. There's a triangle. This sounds very similar to the sine wave. And so it's actually less complex than the square, but more complex than the sine wave, if you can kind of see that. And you can tell by the upper frequencies. It's showing you how loud the harmonics are in the upper frequencies. So the last one, actually there's 2 more. So the square wave, which we just saw, looks like this again. And it's louder and more complex. But there's also another, a couple more types of square waves, but instead of having the exact square shape, it's called a pulse wave because it's more of a rectangle now, so it's thinner. And that's what it sounds like. And we can even get a pulse wave that's 12.5%, which again is going to be more complex. It's almost like having a chiptune's guitar. And now you can see there's low end, there's tons of high end frequencies. Those bands there's a lot of harmonics in between the pure tones as well. And the last thing that I want to show you is the noise. So this is going to be really important for sound effects because, like what I was talking about before, in real life we actually hear something that is not just a pure sine wave, not just a pure square wave. We never really hear those in nature. But with the noise, what we're actually hearing is an equal amount of amplitude for all frequencies. So that's much more realistic to what we get in real life, and by shaping the noise oscillator, we can actually make sound effects that sound pretty cool. And that's what that sounds like. And you can see on the EQ, all the amplitudes are relatively equal except for that band around 20K, which is barely audible. So that's what those all look like. And these are actually really important because, especially with chiptunes, you have a very limited palette to work with. And you need to know what's going to actually sound good together and what's going to clash with each other. So you wouldn't want to use noise for a melody, obviously, because it's too complex. But you would want to use it for percussion sounds, maybe, because it has a good transient quality to it. And percussion sounds in general are more complex than any type of instrument that you're going to hear. So let's actually listen to how this sounds in traction now. Let's start off with that triangle wave. So like we mentioned earlier, it's a little bit softer than the square wave or the pulse wave. I might actually try the 12.5 pulse for these demos so that you can hear it. Can everybody hear that? Okay. So these parameters right here, I'm going to make this bigger if I can. Nope. Can everyone see them? Okay, so the first parameter that you're going to get is volume, which is pretty straightforward. If I turn the volume up, it gets louder. If I turn the volume down, it gets softer. The next one's going to be attack, though. And what attack does is it changes the amount of time for the oscillator to hit its full amplitude, which is loudness. So if I have the attack all the way down, it's going to hit immediately, right? But if I hit attack and I set it to 1.021 seconds, it's going to take a while to hit its peak amplitude. So this actually can approximate like the bow of a violin or a string section pretty well. So let's bring the attack back down. Decay and sus level are interrelated. So decay basically says it's going to take X amount of time from the attack to go down to our sus level. So it sounds confusing, but when you listen to it, you can hear. As soon as you start setting a decay and a lower sus level, you can hear that it literally, the sound is decaying, the volume is decaying, and you can change the amount of time with the decay parameter. And the sus level, if I actually have it all the way up, then nothing's going to happen, because the sus level is all the way up to 1, and so is my volume. But if I set the sus level down here, it's going to take 1.263 seconds for my original amplitude to decay down to the sus level. So we're really just using time and volume to shape the sound at this point. So let's bring the sus level back up. Does anyone know what release does? It sort of says it in the name. So with release, it actually doesn't have anything to do with while you're holding down the note. It's as soon as you let go of the note. So I can hold it down for as long as I want, but when I let go, it's going to take this amount of time to decay. Back to 0. It's also a really good way to get sort of a fake reverb going. And this last one, pitch bend range, that actually has to do with if you have a MIDI keyboard, I can hold it. So that's specifically for a MIDI keyboard. There are other ways to program that in too, which I can show you later once we get going. But for now, don't worry too much about it, because there's other ways to bend the pitch just using this plugin. So up until this point, we haven't used this second block, because if you have it set to, if you have the sweep switch set to off, then none of this stuff down here matters. It's not going to actually function. So I'm still getting my regular pulse wave going. If I set it to negative, though, we're going to hear this. So that's what that does. What the sweep time is it tells you how long it takes to make that full sweep. So if I set it high like I had, it's going to take a long time, like it just did. But if I set it to a low time, somewhere in the middle is going to sound like this. And you can already see how we're getting some pretty awesome sound effects. Vibrato, time, depth, and delay are actually let's switch this to positive so you can hear that too. So the vibrato, time, and depth actually are pretty subtle in this plugin, so sometimes it's hard to hear them. But basically it has to do with while it's sweeping, it sort of adds a little bit of frequency jiggle. You can kind of hear it a little bit. The vibrato time is a little bit fast there. It almost sounds a little bit like distortion. And the delay just sets the time for that vibrato to happen later. But again, these last three are actually pretty subtle, and they really only work well within certain frequency ranges. Any questions so far? Okay, cool. So what I'm actually going to do, I was going to walk you through a couple examples of some sound effects, but I think it'd be more fun to see what you guys can come up with a simple weapon sound effect. So from what we just learned, you're using amplitude, which is the loudness, and you're also using the timing changes and the timing parameters to change how long or short and how loud these sound effects are going to be. And you also have the addition of pitch bending, which is going to be really good for laser sounds and things like that. So I just want to see if you guys can start coming up with a cool weapon sound effect. It doesn't matter what kind of weapon that is, I'm just interested to see what you come up with, and then maybe we can listen to a couple of them up here. And I'll come around and help out. Oh, okay, all you have to do is click on the Magical 8-bit plugin in front of your, yes, right there. Remember, it can be a little tricky at first though, because you have to actually draw in your notes, and then you're going to have to press the space bar to play through what you've written. Yep, just click it right in the, Well, these are all the parameters. That's really interesting. Oh, you know what? Might be because you're on a tablet. So it's not like popping up. Yeah, maybe not. Okay, let me check that out. But those are all the parameters though, so that should work. Might be it's a touch screen. Yeah, it might just be. Oh, that's actually going to be really good for when you're actually writing music because it's so much more intuitive to touch on screen than it is to like play. Alright, sorry. Yeah, just one second. It looks like we do. Yeah, this is a sweet switch. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, it looks like for some operating systems, it's just a grid. It really, it's the exact same functionality though. If you don't know. Oh yeah, you're right. That's really weird. I mean, if there was a 3 to I'm not sure why this is happening. It's possible that it is. It might be just is incompatibility with Windows. We're using a lot of like free software, so I downloaded it just a couple weeks ago. It really should. Unless it's a different, it might just be a different. It might just be that it's a different. Maybe for all PCs. Did you guys get that pop-up up there? Yeah. It looks like it's just Windows. It's only popping up on Mac. Oh yeah, that actually makes sense because this is audio unit. It might just be like a weird bug, but I'm not really Windows. I promise the last 3 are very unnecessary to this download. And it would definitely work if we weren't using this free version of Traction. You can get a lot done with just these. The broader depth and the layer. So see if you can work with what you have, and I'll see if there's a weird issue. Let's see if we can fix it. You getting it working? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and you can change the wave shape right there, but that sounds exactly like a Mario game. Close enough. It sounds exactly like Mario. How are you doing? Oh no. Okay, so expand out your track one and click on that so you have some more room. Just this little yellow button right there. You go. Now you're going to want to click on it right here. Insert new clip and then insert new. So next thing is you're going to drag and drop the filter right here again. And you're going to select manually. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I didn't realize that that pop-up wasn't available on Windows. But these are still all your functions that you can use. You can change your oscillator type right there. Is everything going all right for you?
Yeah,
You got sound?
won't be available in Windows Phone.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's really weird. It might just be like a compatibility issue. Are you good to go or? Okay, cool. Oh yeah, that's it. Cool. Do you have when you hear your gunshot sound effects? So you can use the arrows to kind of just pull back a little bit quicker in the space bar. Nice. That's really cool. Cool. Remember your settings, and we'll listen to that one up on the speakers whenever it comes done. Did you get anything interesting? I'll let you work on it for a little bit. What you got, Tommy?
Yeah, I'll also make a melody. I'll make a melody.
We're going to melody.
Yep.
The next part of the lecture, Tommy.
Yeah. There you go. I had it, and then I went on.
How's your weapon sound effect coming?
You sound like a weapon guy.
All right. What does it sound like?
I'm just messing around. It's not really computer talking.
Also, for those of you who are having some trouble with the weapon sound effect, if you lower the sus level, let's turn this off for a sec. If you increase the decay a little bit and lower the sus level, you'll get a much shorter note. And then the shorter your decay is, the shorter it's going to be. Hear that? So that can be helpful for like gunshots and things that you need to rapid fire. Also, so far I haven't heard anyone use the noise oscillator yet. So there's a hint. I'm hearing louder now. Madness. Did you get any gun sound effect yet?
Oh, weapon sound effects.
Well, also weapon, any kind of weapon sound effects.
It's so small.
Let's hear it. Nice, that's cool. Also, don't be afraid to, oh, this I should say to everyone. Don't be afraid to use the entire frequency range too. If you, and I'll come over and show you right now. If you actually click on that arrow on the piano roll editor, which is right here, this arrow, you can resize it. So whatever you do, sometimes it can sound wildly different up on a higher register versus a lower register. So make sure that you use the full frequency range, and weapon sound effects sound really cool on either extreme. So really, really high or really, really low sound like very cool weapons.
This far happens to me.
Huh?
So far when I
Oh, you have to click that and then highlight the range that you want. Yeah.
So if I were to do this, right? And then I put it here, I can change it. That would only put that.
Oh no, it's so this isn't.
That's all.
Yeah, that is the sound that you're getting.
Yeah.
The Magical 8-bit plugin is the sound that you're getting. These are just MIDI parameters, and the only thing you can change is the length of the note or the velocity, as of right now.
Yeah.
So, for example, as far as the high and the low end go, check this out. This is the high end. This is the way high end of the range of the piano roll. And that's that same exact sound on the low end. And you can copy these settings if you look up there. This is on the low end. Right, so one of those sounds like a really badass weapon, and the other doesn't. So it makes a big difference. All right, who has a weapon sound effect that they want to share? Any volunteers? You want to share yours? All right. See if you can just take a picture of those and do it on mine so that we can hear it a little bit louder. Here you go. Now change the settings over here to
Oh dear God.
whatever you have.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Here, I can find it. Volume. You have it set to noise, right?
Yes.
Volume's all the way up. Attack is about there. Decay is here. Sus level is down here. Bend range. Oh, I don't see. Do you have the pitch bend on? The sweep, the stuff?
Yes. It was on negative
Negative. And what was the sweep time?
and sweep time is
Oh, I see it.
0.0954.
Is this it? That's really awesome. That's a pretty badass weapon sound. Didn't you have a good one too? Let's all clap at that. Yeah! Let's do one more and then we'll move on because I have a couple other sound effect challenges for you guys. I want you to leave here with an array of sound effects. What time is it?
8:30.
Oh God, great. We might actually move on to music straight after this, so that, cool. Right after we listen to this.
Alright, I had it on, I didn't have it on noise, I had it on pulse.
Which one, 12.5 or 25?
I think it's 12.5.
Okay.
It's a little hard to read on this.
You want me to check it out?
Yeah, it's gonna have to read, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a little hard to read. Attack.
How much is it reading?
Attack decay is 0. Sus levels all the way up. This is, that's the
I think it's in the same order, so.
bend range. Yep. It's in negative. Sweep time is pretty high. Okay, cool. All right, so let's try this. Were you hitting a low key or a high key?
There's 2 keys.
That's very good. Laser. Nice job. All right, cool. That is some awesome stuff. Also, we're actually at the end of this. I'm going to give you a chance to do like a complete, like 4 or 5 sound effects array. And I just want to make a note that it is important to think about frequencies and overall complexity in terms of the mix, because if you have a player gunshot that sounds like this, and then you have an enemy gunshot that also sounds like this, they kind of blend into each other, and you can't really hear. What you want is you want your enemy gunshot to sound like this, and your player gunshot to sound like this, so that the frequencies don't compete with each other, and you can actually hear it very clearly and crisply in the mix. All right, so it's also important not to do something like this where there's a crazy long release, because with gunshots, if you were going to do multiple or like an automatic weapon or something like that, it would get very cloudy and not very clear. Okay, so that was fun. Let's move on to composing. So for composing, I just want to actually listen to something before we actually get into it. Because one of the most important things when you're learning to the basics of how to compose anything, even chiptunes, is actually just developing a decent ear where you can hear what the melody is, what the bass line is, what the constituent parts of this composition are. And then once you do that, it's easy to kind of take it apart and build back your own. Okay, so while this is going on, can you name me what instruments you can hear? Or what the analog instruments would be in the real world?
I mean, you hear the bass line.
Right, that's the first one, is the bass line, right? It doesn't have to be exact instruments, but I'm trying to figure out what the parts to this musical piece are. So number 1, bass line, definitely.
Drums.
Yes, number 2, drums. What else do we have? There's not much else.
No,
What's that? Clap. Chiptune's clap, maybe.
I mean, the melody line and
Yeah.
the harmony above it.
Exactly. The last thing is the melody and possibly a harmony, but you don't even always get a harmony. The point that I'm trying to make is with chiptunes, like I mentioned earlier, they're very accessible because the limitations of the system actually forced it to be accessible and very simple. But even if you take this and you take it out of context and you move into much more complex music, you can still take that, if you have a good ear, you can still take that really complex music and take it apart and think about it in terms of its parts, its bass line, its rhythms, But for our purposes for this this demo, we're gonna think about the music that we're gonna write in terms of percussion, bass line, and melody. And this is also a very good example of those three. There's the percussion right there. This is like one of the most iconic songs of all time, and it's so simple. And that's part of the reason why it is actually iconic. Alright, that's enough of that for now. But what's that?
I remember seeing a piano sheet from that music and it made me cry. It's like, why are there so many keys playing at the same time?
Yep. So because it's so simple, it actually makes for a really cool aesthetic, right? That's why everyone loves chiptunes. The music is simple, and so are the actual sounds themselves. We're only using pure tones. Does anyone here actually write music at all, or play an instrument? I'm just curious to see what kind of level. So, sorta. Okay. So let's move the magical 8-bit plug back into, we're just going to turn the pitch sweep off, and we're going to turn the attack low again. So I'm assuming that there's going to be sort of varying degrees of music knowledge in here, but the basics are going to be really important. You guys were already writing in notes via MIDI. You're going to do that exactly the same way as you did for sound effects. You're going to write in the notes in a linear way, and you're going to actually listen back to it for the timing. But what's that?
How do we have to go back to the normal sounding? Right now it sounds.
What do you mean normal sounding?
Like a minute, right now it just sounds.
Oh, well, you can delete the plugin, and then the quickest way is just to delete the plugin and then reinstantiate it. Yeah, so the first thing is, and this is like the biggest mistake people make, is they start working on a piece of music without using the metronome at all, or the grid. And then later on, it sounds kind of sloppy and they're trying to fix things up, but it's kind of a nightmare because you don't have a grid to actually work with. So the first thing that I want you to do is turn on this click right here, right above the CPU, and listen to your tempo and make sure that you have the tempo that you want. And remember, the tempo is a global parameter, so if you want to turn up the tempo, you're going to raise this bar up. If you want to lower the tempo, you're going to lower it. Too low. Way too low. But that's an important first step. The second step is actually going to be to decide, kind of just break up your piece of music and work on it one piece at a time, just like we listened to, right? So you can start with either the percussion, the bass line, or the melody. It doesn't really matter. I would want to encourage you to start with the melody because that's usually what's the catchiest part, is the thing that people latch onto the most, but it's really up to you. The hardest part is if you're not a musician to kind of come up with a melody that you like. But usually if you just use your ear, we've all been listening to music since we were born, so you actually all have really good ears. You just kind of need to think in terms of simplistic ways to make a simple and catchy melody. My trick here is even if you know nothing about music, the trick to making catchy melodies is just using the black keys. It's going to sound really weird, but it actually really works. So try just using the black keys, really simple melodies, and don't get too bogged down in anything super complex. Just try and figure it out based on what you're hearing in your head. The second thing, which is the bass line, I'm going to talk really quickly about contrary motion. So if your melody is going up, a really interesting way to make a bass line is to do the exact opposite and go down. You can also just sort of copy the melody and pick the more weighted notes, the notes that are actually held for the longest amount or bear the most weight melodically and resonance. And you can kind of just copy it, and that's called similar motion. Bass lines are really similar, similar to melodies, but they're often simpler, and they're sort of used to drive the beat along. And the last thing is going to be the percussion part. So the first thing that you're going to want to do when you're writing a percussion part is actually going to be to shape the sound, because the things that we're using right now, these aren't going to work for percussion, right? We have to actually change the magical 8-bit plugin sound to sound like it's going to be a percussion. So this is why I started with sound effects instead of music, because what we really need is that noise. It already kind of sounds like a snare drum. So my go-to for like hi-hats and stuff is to lower the sus level and raise the decay level just a bit. That already sounds kind of like a hi-hat. And then you can actually do a whole separate track, which you should automatically have about 6 tracks up there. But you can always add another track by going to Tracks, New Track. As far as the kick and the snare drum go, it's very similar to what it's going to look like for a hi-hat, but I like to add a little bit of release to it. And boost the volume a bit. And actually the frequency range here is what's going to determine the difference between the snare drum and the kick drum. As far as chiptunes go, we have a limited palette, so they're going to sound very similar, but if you use a very low frequency for the kick, can you hear that? And a higher frequency for the snare, they're going to be differentiated. So make sure you shape your sounds first before you start composing, and make sure you actually set your tempo first. So the idea here is we're going to build our composition one simple step at a time. You're going to come up with a very simple melody right off the bat. Then you're going to come up with a bass line to complement that melody. And then the last thing is you're going to shape your sound to sound like a hi-hat and a percussion, any kind of percussion instrument you want, and you're going to use that to sort of drive the piece forward. So I'll let you guys go with that, and we'll let you share yours in a few minutes. Where's your melody from before? That is an awesome melody. You got a melody in mind? You know chords? That's all you need. Huh? That's all you need. If you're going to do chords, change the volume on the magical 8-bit plug so that you can bring it down maybe like halfway or 3/4 of the way. You can do it right on the 8-bit plug actually. So there you go. Oh yeah, volume right there. Because that way it'll sound a little bit thinner and it won't be super Oh, it's there. Do you want to help out? Okay, so first is you're going to kind of click and drag the track itself. Hold it. On a regular computer, you kind of have to hover over this and just click and drag. But that's just going to play that. So. Then you're going to click and drag on the filter. And you're going to drag it right in front of that. Yeah, there you go. Synth. And you're ready to go. No problem. You got anything so far? Yes, you can actually. It's a little bit weird though. It's up here. If you click on the region itself, one of these should be able to look here. If you hover over it, see those three things in the red? There you go. And we can actually click and drag this out now, and it'll loop. There it is. Yep. So one question that was just asked was how to loop things, and we're actually going to talk about looping as it pertains to a game in a few minutes. But for now, if you want to loop a region, or if you have a catchy melody that you want to just loop, what you're going to do is you're going to click this button on the top right. You can barely see, but you toggle that on, and then scroll over to the end of your region, and then you can click and drag on that, and you can see it starts looping over again. You can see these MIDI regions, and that's how you loop.
Was the A on the upper right of the track?
The what?
Which one did you click to?
The loop. So this is going to be toggled on, the one on the top right, and then scroll over to the right to the end of your MIDI region. This is the scroller. You can turn that help pop-up off too, which is kind of annoying. That's what you're going to click and drag out. Yeah. So you're going to want to clean up your region a little bit first so that you get it to exactly where you go.
So when we click
Metronome's not on right now?
I knew that, but I did like.
It's on.
Oh, so I actually start playing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to be playing. It's time sync basically. You having fun?
Especially with the visuals so far.
Over here. You can get those smaller too. You can get like even smaller increments and just arpeggiate. There's other synths that do it a lot easier.
Simple. And you know where the front chord has to go.
You should just leave that as a loop.
Yeah, and then I was going to have a melody go
Awesome. Yeah.
under it.
Good. That's going to be our example. So make it good. I hear some dissonant tones and I like it. And then hear your masterpiece. Yeah, sometimes it's louder. Last. mean, oh, you know what it is? Because the attack is so long. You know about that, there you go. I like that. That's a great melody. Are you playing instrument or anything? See, it just goes to show we all have the capability. We all can do my job better than you. That's great, yeah. I would say, now I'm just gonna actually, I really like some of the kind of I would say let's shape it a little bit just to make it a little tighter, crisper, you know? So, this is off right now. So, you can do that a little bit by setting the release maybe a little bit shorter. You can do that also by setting a little bit of a delay and a sus level. That way it's like we're getting an attack of our, like imagine a violin bow, where like you have the attack and then the sustain is a little bit softer. And then when they let go, that's the echo to the room. So you can play around with some, I wouldn't make it too crazy, which means like the sus level shouldn't be, the sus level actually is naturally up here, right? Because if it's not sustaining, if it's not lowering itself at all, it's going to stay at the same volume as our regular volume. So if we lower it just a little bit, then within this decay time, it'll reach that amplitude. So if you can tighten these up, it'll make it sound a little bit crisper. And I think maybe just bring that a little bit down, bring that up. See if you can work with it. Are you imagining a specific instrument? Because sometimes it's really good to do that. Yeah. Cool. Anybody else have a melody they want to share? Got something yet, Carl? Well, perfect. That's the whole point of this lecture.
Yeah, this is so far what I've got from melody.
That's great. You should do a bass line and like a simple classic Mario thing is really just having those like jazzy hi-hats, you know, and the way that you can do that in the natural 8-bit is the same way that we made those hi-hats earlier and the kick and the snare using the noise.
So the country starts to grab that because relatively low salsa
Yes, it's exactly. It's a low sus level and a quick decay. And so that ensures that the sound is going to be transient rather than sustained. But the trick with Mario is if you want to get something like jazzy or like a shaker, which is like kind of what they use for the Mario themes, you can also add a little bit extra attack. That way it sort of fades into it. So it's like, you know, that would be really cool. So because we're really running out of time here, I also want to explain one other topic that we haven't really gotten to. But once you have your melody and bass line and your percussion put together, you still don't really have what you need for a video game. Because in video games, we don't just use linear pieces of music. We actually have to use loops. So when you're composing your theme here, your gameplay loop, what you need to do is make sure that the ending of the loop actually feeds back into the beginning of the loop well. Because if it doesn't do that, it's going to be very obvious when it loops, and it's going to be very annoying to the player. And the first rule in game audio is do no annoying. So see if you can conceptualize that, and while you're working on your melody, loop it and see if it actually works like it loops back on itself. And in about 5 or 6 minutes, I'm going to teach you all how to export this so that you can actually go home and listen to it in like a WAV file. You have a melody? Well, at least now you can work on it at home. You got a melody you want to share?
No melody, just
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah. Yes. That's cool. What do you got?
Yeah.
Basically, like the one song I made,
Right. I was gonna say, try that on the low range, and it'll sound awesome. I also think that this is actually supposed to be 1/2 step lower. Just these two low notes right here. Oh, you've got them on. Oh, I see. Oh, cool. Yeah, you gotta get the click going if you want to figure out the timing, because that's what the grid set up for. This program isn't the best for that, because like whatever it's using to figure out how to quantize to the grid is really bad. Like I was working on something today, and it took me like 3 times as long as it should have, because it quantizes way over here or way over there. But it's much easier if you just kind of pick and move around. Got any melodies you want to share? Give me a beat. Let me hear it. That's awesome. That's perfect. All right, last thing, I just want to show you all how to actually bounce or export whatever you've got, sound effects or music, into an audio file. So the last thing is right up here, or down here in the bottom left where it says Save, Import, Clipboard, and Export. Export is how we're going to export our composition into an audio file. The free version, I think, doesn't actually let you render as anything compressed except for an OGG. So we're just going to do uncompressed audio file. And this right here is actually a really helpful tool. It's remove silence at start and end. So especially if you're doing this for an actual game where you need it to loop, it's automatically going to remove a lot of the silence from the start and the end, no matter where in terms of the linear composition you've actually started working on this. So make sure you have that selected. You can also render only marked regions, which is also really helpful for if you're doing a loop or something like that. But it has a size limit, so if it's too small, it won't render it. So that's kind of annoying. You can also only render selected tracks, render each track to a separate file, which is great, and you can render at different play speeds. Ignore those for now. And this is another good function is you can adjust the overall level so that even if you're working at a really high level or a really loud level, which you should never do, which is a whole other topic, you can select what level you want to render it as. So in general you want just under 0 dB. So that's basically the equivalent of CD quality decibels. And then you're just going to hit render, and it'll appear as where you save it to, and then that's it. And then you have a WAV file that you can import into iTunes or listen to from wherever. It's just export. Export uncompressed audio file. Does anybody want to come up and share their melody for the end of class? Tommy? All right. Actually, yeah, let's just plug you in.
Enjoy the progression.
Let me know when you're hooked in.
Yeah. Give them my question.
All right. All right, this is Tommy's gameplay loop melody. That sounds good. Just so you all know, he's been working on this literally the entire time since we started. Anybody else before we finish this up, because it's already 9? Don't be shy. Taro? Want to end the class? Yeah, or you can just bring your, I've got the speakers up here, so. I hope the piece is worth it.
That's the street. It's working.
I feel like responsible for that.
So this is my terrible attempt at getting any portion of Dr. Mario's Fever soundtrack working.
-5 for self-doubt.
And it's super short, but that's all right. Can you hear me?
Fine.
Just make sure it's, yeah, it's on.
Speakers and headphones.
Are these all 3 1/8" outs?
At least the middle one, I'm pretty darn sure is an out. I would not be
How are
surprised.
your speakers on the computer itself?
That's a good question. Okay, let's try that. Oh wow, not even playing it.
That's weird.
Yeah, that is weird. I don't understand.
Can you sing it to us? In chiptunes?
I refuse. That's a humanly difficult task. to demand of me. Darn it. All right.
Oh well. Anybody else? Last call. All right. That's all I got.
It was music to my ears.
Well, just want to say a big thanks to Spencer for this lesson.
Yeah.